Hey, I'm Pastor Todd, and I'm here with Pastor Will, and we're talking about race, ethnic history, its impact on worldview, and its effect on how we respond to things that happen in the world that include race. So I might be good. We need to just maybe offer up some definition of like what is racism. So how would you define just the idea of racism? What is that?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different tiers in the category of what I would say racism is, and I guess I want to attack the more common one. I think there's two that are more common. One is that someone is actively harboring some sort of animosity towards a different group or race or ethnic group, right? So that's I think that's probably the one that most commonly comes to somebody's mind. But I believe that under the category of racism, there's much nuance, and so I think on one side you can have something called implicit bias, which is this idea that maybe it's not conscious, but because of society, upbringing, personal history, ethnic history, you can have some, I want to say, gut level reactions that are negative to people of another ethnic group.
Yeah, and I would throw in there, they could be you're unconscious of them, or you haven't even thought about how you're thinking about it.
Right.
Because it's just sort of like something that you do.
Right.
Like, this was more a testimony to being in downtown Atlanta when I was young, not necessarily an ethnic group.
Yeah.
But when we were in downtown Atlanta, I remember my mom was like, lock the doors.
Yeah.
Because she was a little nervous, a little scared. She didn't know what people might do. So that's sort of like that bias of like, why do you think we got to lock the doors?
Yeah.
Like, what's there?
Yeah.
So keep going. So like there's that view.
Right. And so like I think that it's hard to tell on the outside which one someone might be feeling. But I remember the first time that I experienced being treated differently, at least cognitively, that I knew I was being treated differently because of my race. I remember I was at Haywood Mall, and I was looking at some clothes. I was in I can't remember which one of the department stores, and there was this lady that was like right behind me, kind of following me the whole time. And so then I thought I would kind of play a game, and so like I walked in a circle around one particular rack. And we just both kind of looked at each other, and like she's like, "Oh, you see what I'm doing?" Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I was like, I kind of at that point I just left the store, but I thought, why is she treating me different?
Yeah.
Why? What is going on? And I think that if you were to have a friend who was a person of color and then ask them about experiences, you're going to get something that is as lighthearted as what I said to something that could be extremely different and dangerous. Yeah. Regarding
and harsh.
Completely unjust. Regarding being kind of judged. And I don't know what was going on and that woman's, I didn't ask her, right? But I did recognize that I was being treated differently. And then it's happened all the time. Like as I've gotten older, I just feel like when I'm walking down the street, I notice that some people walk away, or they don't just move aside, but they like go to the other side of the road. There was a time when I had to, I didn't have a car, I had to ride my bike to work, and I used to work at a bank, so I was wearing nice clothes. Right. And I used to just like ride down the street going to work, and I just see people just kind of ducking, walking this way, walking that way, and it became really frustrating. And here's how I know that still exists as people. I remember when I was in college, I was talking to a friend who was a white guy, and he said, "Well, I like you." And I was like, "Oh man, thanks, man, appreciate that." He's like, "You're different than the other black people," and I was like, "Wait a minute, time out." And I didn't even know how to engage that. Right. But for some reason, whatever he viewed as good about me was not a characteristic of the other black people, which is extremely frustrating to me.
So I think it's important. It's kind of like when you define total depravity.
Yeah.
People get the idea that they think that total depravity means like you're totally wicked, like you're just pure Lord of the Rings, Sauron evil, ring wraith evil. And the reality of total depravity is not the meanest that you can be kind of idea. It's that it's creeped into every part of your being. And so I think people treat the idea of racism as, well, I'm not a racist, because they see it as like a Nazi's attitude towards a Jew. Like that's racist. Yeah. It's when you want to wipe out an entire ethnic group because of their ethnicity. Like, I mean, that's what racism is. But yes, that I would agree that is racism, but that's sort of like racism in its most extreme expression. And there are definitely like layers that go all the way down to two ideas that I think are important for us to realize, that we can be racially inconsiderate. But as I am growing in my awareness of what this idea is, I'm hopeful, and I would believe that a vast majority of people would not be full-on Nazi Germany level. I don't think we have that. I mean, like, it's possible. Anything's possible. It is South Carolina. But I think what we have are people who are more often than not uninformed about how they're maybe crossing lines and saying things, or inconsiderate. So they've learned something, but they just really don't care, and they're doing it anyway. And those, to me, are the bigger dangers that show up that I find myself having to deal with, is a just sort of like unaware or inconsiderate. Like you're only thinking about yourself and your worldview. You're not considering another worldview. And some of that may have to do with just the idea that they haven't been exposed to the worldview. The last time, or the last conversation that we just had, you mentioned watching a documentary. Other than a documentary, do you know the name of that documentary? Or it's
called Eyes on the Prize.
Eyes on the Prize. Is that still out there?
Yeah, I'm sure you can find it.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any other kind of like resource, like if you are finding someone who wants to say, man, I don't want to be uninformed or inconsiderate, and they think that maybe they need to grow to understand racism better, like what other resources might they grab?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
A couple just off the top of my head. There is a study called Be the Bridge.
Okay.
And that's like a small group study that talks about the nuances of racial history, implicit bias. There is a book out called The Color of Compromise. This is talking about particularly the church's involvement historically in America in racism. You can another one would be The New Jim Crow. That's a book about some the injustices that exist within the criminal justice system. The 13th it's on Netflix.
Okay.
That's a documentary that kind of covers some of the things.
It's just called 13th?
It's called 13th, yes.
Okay.
And it talks about the racial injustices that exist in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And so I think, when I'm trying to learn about something, I'll get a book, I'll read it, and then if I really want to learn more, you just look at the footnotes, right?
Right.
You look at the footnotes and they start
referencing. Yeah. That's great. That's good. Hope let's learn. Let's grow in our understanding of what this word means. Yeah.